From a Chinese vassal state, let's talk about a World Health body that became China's accomplice. I'm talking about the World Health Organization. China said the Wuhan virus does not transmit from humans. The WHO believed it. China said there was no lab leak. The WHO's investigators went along with that too, until an outraged global community stood up to question those findings. Now, the WHO is making a sharp U-turn. The World Health body now wants a probe into the lab leak theory. 2.5 years into the pandemic, they've realized that a lot of questions still remain unanswered. And there is a need to look for more evidence, especially in China.
So they've issued some preliminary recommendations to outline studies that need to be conducted so that we have the data, we have better knowledge about what may have happened in the beginning of this pandemic. And what you can see in the report is that they really outline that there's a lot more work that needs to be done in China and elsewhere.
Last year, the WHO said a lab leak was extremely unlikely. Those are the words they used. Now the WHO has recommended a probe into it in the strongest possible words. What has changed? A new team has been appointed to look into the origins of the pandemic. It is called SAGO, the Scientific Advisory Group for the Origins of Novel Pathogens. Experts from 25 countries are part of this. It came together after the first investigation. In 2021, a group of investigators had gone to Wuhan. We told you about it. The probe was compromised from day one. China picked the team that was part of this investigation. It refused to give any raw data. China even pressured the investigators to drop the lab leak theory. By the time the report came out, the outcome was already clear. It was no secret. China not just influenced the investigation, it was practically trying to dictate it. But then came a sudden twist. The WHO Director General refused to accept China's claims. Dr. Tedros praised China's response to the pandemic in the very beginning, remember. But in a rare departure from his usual deference to China, he refused to rule out a lab leak. He even suggested the first assessment was not extensive enough. That's when Dr. Tedros ordered the second round of investigation. In July last year, he said dismissing the lab leak was premature. He also asked China to be more transparent. But as always, Beijing refused to cooperate. Behind the scenes, Dr. Tedros has been sending letters to Beijing. He wrote 2 of them in February this year. The first one went out to Chinese Premier Li Keqiang on the 14th of February. The second one was for Chinese Health Minister Ma Xiaowei. What did Dr. Tedros want from the Chinese? Information about laboratory hypothesis. What kind of information? The WHO won't tell. Did China reply to these letters from Dr. Tedros? The WHO won't tell that either. The fact remains that Beijing is blocking any attempts for another probe into China. It wants the world to accept the first report. The new group of investigators did engage with China. It was a futile attempt, though. China sent a team of officials. Reports say they presented some new findings. But the investigators were not satisfied. Beyond the lab leak theory, they had questions about the Huanan seafood market, the same market that propelled the Wuhan virus to a pandemic. Investigators believe it needs to be studied further. So will the WHO be able to find the origins of the Wuhan virus? It failed to move quickly enough during the early days of the pandemic. Now more than 2 years have passed. Over 6 million people have died. With China's lack of transparency, reaching any conclusion looks impossible at the moment. There are doubts over the WHO's own competency. Remember that research on excess Wuhan virus deaths, the one that claimed nearly 10 times more people died in India? India contested that claim and questioned the WHO's methodology. Now, WHO's own researchers say there were errors in that report. Mistakes were made in calculating the mortality estimates of 2 countries, Germany and Sweden. Now, some corrections have been made there. Germany's estimate has been cut by 37%. Sweden's estimate has been raised by 19%. The WHO's credibility took a beating during the pandemic. Such mistakes will hardly restore trust in this World Health body. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.